Woo! We about to make a name for ourselves here. It's Deadpool and Wolverine, here on the Atomic Lizards podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Atomic Lizards podcast. It's time for our Now Playing series, where we look at the newest movies and television shows currently playing or streaming. I'm Miranda, the film fanatic.
I'm Udi, the de facto film expert.
And I'm Dan, the kaiju extraordinaire.
On today's episode of Now Playing, we'll be discussing the latest entry in the MCU and Deadpool franchises, Deadpool and Wolverine.
Deadpool and Wolverine sees the return of the Merc with a Mouth in an all-new multiversal and Fox Marvel hero adventure. When Paradox, the leader of a rogue unit within the Time Variance Authority, aka the TVA, recruits Wade Wilson, aka Deadpool, to help him destroy timelines, he doesn't expect how poorly recruiting God's perfect idiot will go when Wade is given the ability to jump between the many universes of the Marvel multiverse.
Deadpool and Wolverine is a 2024 movie directed by Sean Levy, who also co-wrote the film with Rhett Reese, Paul Wernick, Ryan Reynolds, and Zeb Wells. It is the long-anticipated threequel and the first Deadpool movie to be set in the MCU post the Disney-Fox merger. It stars Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, Emma Corrin, Matthew McFadden, Morena Baccarin, Rob Delaney, and Leslie Uggams.
Episode will have spoilers, so go watch it if you haven't. So, what did you guys think of Deadpool and Wolverine? We'll start with you, Udi.
Well. As the only Marvel movie we'll be getting this year, I think it was enjoyable. It was a fun experience, and I think it has more than enough content and post-movie memeage to last us until next year, where we'll go back to like a pretty regularly scheduled MCU-filled year. But yeah, I was looking forward to this movie. I didn't really keep up on a lot of the like set leaks and stuff like that, just because I didn't really want to know, and I just wanted to go into it knowing as little as possible. And while I was initially a little disappointed after my first viewing, I did go see it a second time, and I enjoyed it a bit more. For sure. I thought like I just didn't like think as much. I was just like, well, this is what it is, and I watched it and I was like, yeah, this is more fun. It's not that like my expectations were set lower. I just, again, because I didn't really know what was going to be happening outside of like a few couple of things. I guess I don't know. I wasn't sure what to expect, and so I do think in that regard, I went in like with more level expectations, I guess, my second viewing, and then I was like, okay, all right. Like I still have issues with it, and I still have like my own thoughts and feelings about it, but it was fun. It's a fun blockbuster, summer blockbuster. I think it's weird because like they have a lot of cameos and Easter eggs and whatnot, but a lot of the cameos and whatnot are more like low stakes. Like it's just people that you probably would have never expected, or a lot of them are a lot of people you never would have expected to see again, which makes it kind of cool. But also overall, this has sort of like a love letter / homage feeling to like the Fox Marvel universe. So in that regard, it's nice, and you can tell that people cared about that aspect of the movie. The action wasn't bad. It wasn't like there was something lacking in it for me, but it wasn't bad. There wasn't as many laughs as I was hoping for, or thinking it might be, and that could be a result of just me growing up since the last few ones that came out, or maybe just the writing wasn't that good. I don't know, but there was a couple of parts that were kind of funny, and there was a couple of parts that had become memes, as you heard one of them at the beginning of the episode. But other than that, I would say it wasn't as funny as I was hoping for, but that's just me, humor is subjective, so it is what it is. But yeah, the action wasn't too bad. It could have been better, and I have some light qualms with it, but otherwise, like there's a lot of movies that have much worse action. So, all around, not bad. Some decent performances, some fun gags, and yeah. I'll wrap up. What about you, Miranda? What did you think of Deadpool and Wolverine?
Well, to start, I have not seen the first Deadpool, and I have not seen the second Deadpool. I did see the ending because my sibling was watching it in the living room, so I watched the ending, and I was like, that was dumb. So that's like, also I don't particularly like the fans surrounding Deadpool, and I don't particularly care for Deadpool as a character. So now that I got my little disclaimer out, This movie was about what I was expecting, lots of crude jokes and referential things. I think if I actually cared about Deadpool or even the MCU, more of it would have had like an impact. I'm basically done with the MCU after watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I just love the Guardians in that movie so much that like it's really hard for the MCU right now to get me interested in other things other than them. And like I just don't really care about any of the other MCU characters on the same level. So that's where I'm standing with the MCU. I mean, there's still interesting movies to watch and like they're fun little like popcorn flicks, but I'm not really invested in the whole theories and like internet connected universe thing, like all of that stuff. I do find Deadpool to be a really annoying character. Though that is his character and that is the point. So the creative team is definitely pulling that off by making him annoying. I'm annoyed because he's annoying because they did their jobs correctly. With that being said, though, you can still have an annoying character and have your audience care for them. And I'm sure people care about Deadpool a lot. I just don't. There was some funny bits, like the small Wolverine and the 20th Century Fox logo in the sand. But that one's also kind of sad because like Fox is gone and Disney owns everything. And like an occasional joke would land, but like not all of them landed for me. I don't really like crude humor. Not really my vibe. But I definitely enjoyed Logan killing Wade a bunch of times. I was like, yeah, he is annoying. You should stab him with your claws. But I did like what they chose to do with Logan and how it's kind of like you were saying, Udi, an homage to the Fox X-Men movies and even calls back to like the older 90s movies, kind of just like acknowledging all of that other stuff. And even though it's a joke in like a joking way, it's still like, hey, yeah, without Blade or Elektra or the bad Daredevil movie or even the 2000 Spider-Man movies, you know, we wouldn't really have the MCU as we have it today, or the Fantastic Four movies, because like Chris Evans is back as Johnny Storm. I do like the fact that he comes back and then promptly dies. I think is a good way for them to do these cameos where it's like, hey, here's what you wanted, but also, hey, this is a different story. This is a different thing. We're gonna do it our own way. But overall, I found the movie to be okay with occasional funny jokes and fun music choices. The score is interesting. And then I liked the montage of the credits of the actors on sets of previous X-Men productions. Those movies and the X-Men in general just mean a lot to people. And like I was saying, like you wouldn't really have the MCU today without those movies. And so I just like that they like acknowledged the Fox productions. But yeah, that's mostly all of my thoughts. Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you bring up a good point. This movie is, in a way, just a big send-off to the Fox Marvel movies, kind of in a way about how Logan was a send-off to just Hugh Jackman's career as Wolverine. So in that respect, yeah, I completely understand why the movie made those decisions that it did with all those cameos and whatnot. Like, I completely understand that, and it makes sense. But for me personally, I do want to say I did end up having fun with this one. The action was good. It was cool to see Hugh Jackman in a fully realized, like, comic accurate Wolverine suit. And I thought the on-screen chemistry between Deadpool and Wolverine was really great. It's weird because while I did really enjoy myself with this movie, those couple of things I listed are really the only positives that I have. Now, don't get me wrong, I did not think this movie was bad, but it was really, at least I felt like, it was really only selling itself on the cameos that are in the movie. I mean, other than that, there's not too much to it. I mean, like the antagonist, Cassandra Nova, she was kind of cool. But once again, like you're either going to love or hate this movie, depending on how much you enjoy meta humor. And some of the jokes did land pretty well for me. There were plenty of moments that did make me laugh out loud. But there were also plenty of jokes that just really weren't that funny to me. And one was just a straight up shameless product placement that was trying to disguise itself as a joke.
Honda Odyssey.
Yeah, exactly. So like the story I felt was pretty weak. And it was pretty much an afterthought, if you ask me. And you could argue, well, we're going to see this movie for Deadpool and Wolverine, not for the story. And you would be 100% correct. It's kind of like the age-old argument that kaiju movies have, where we go for the giant monsters, not for the story. But the difference there, at least this is how I personally feel, the difference there is that monster movies have always been that way. The MCU hasn't. The MCU has built itself up on its storytelling. Granted, there are some examples of early MCU movies that did put more focus on setting up cameos or the cinematic universe around it more than it did its storytelling, such as with Iron Man 2, my own personal opinions about that movie aside. But I want to ask, why were movies like Infinity War and Endgame special to some of us? And I stress some of us because I know how you feel about those movies, Miranda. But still.
I was there at the time. I was hyped for it. In retrospect, I mean, I have some words about it, okay?
Yeah.
Some very kind, loving, tender verbiage for those films.
Sure. That's one way to describe it. I don't know if it's accurate, but you could describe it that way.
All right, but yeah,
that's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
Don't get us started on.
We'll save that for when we eventually do review Infinity War and Endgame. But like, even though Miranda, like, her opinions on that may be different from others, she was still there for it though, so she understands like the hype and the buildup for those movies. So. But still, like, why were those movies special to us? Because it was the culmination of 10 years of buildup and storytelling. It felt like an earned, satisfying payoff for some of us. And I personally feel that it deserved its success. Now, I'm not saying that Deadpool and Wolverine does not deserve its success, but I kind of feel like the only reason why it's successful is because of its cameos. I mean, you take away Hugh Jackman and the plethora of cameos from the previous Fox Marvel movies, and I feel like you barely have a movie. Now, I sound cynical phrasing it that way, but I mean, I feel like it's kind of true. I don't want every new big event Marvel movie to just be, oh, I wonder what cameos are going to be in this one. I want every new big event Marvel movie to be, oh, I wonder how the story is going to conclude. I should be more worried about which characters are going to die, like with Infinity War, not which ones are going to show up. I mean, that's what I feel Marvel could potentially become if movies like these are the only ones making money. And spoiler alert, Deadpool and Wolverine is making a multiverse-sized bag of money. So, like a whole universe of multiverse-sized bag of money. So, now before I get accused of hating fun, I want to stress that I did enjoy myself watching this movie. It was a good time. I did enjoy it. But I feel like this is what Marvel is slowly becoming, and I'm not sure if it's a direction that I'm a fan of.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like you said, I mean, there was always a few movies here and there where the MCU kind of was just padding. Like, it was like, oh, this movie needs to have a bunch of universe building because we're building up to this event movie. It's like, okay, fine. Like, you accepted it at the time because I mean, in a way, it's still like this. I mean, the MCU is like a long-running cinematic TV show, basically, and then it leads to, like, events. And so, you know, it is what it is. But sometimes you'd get a movie that was like, it was fine, but it was just because a lot of it wasn't meant to be like an amazing movie by itself. It was just meant to further the story so that you'd be caught up for the the next event film. But yeah, we're getting to the point, like Dan said, where every single movie is just now becoming a cameo fest and nostalgia baiting and et cetera, et cetera. And like, you know, it's been fun here and there. No Way Home was like the first big MCU movie to really do that. And so like, that was really cool. It was like, it was special. It was really neat to see all the Spider-Man together. But it just feels like every big Marvel movie now, it's like if it doesn't have a bunch of cameos or something. It's just like it does poorly at the box office and et cetera, et cetera. But like, oh, if it has cameos, oh, everyone's gonna go see it, blah blah blah, and then everyone's cheering and hollering and woo woo woo, like whatever. But like, I don't know. It is kind of frustrating because it's frustrating and disappointing because it's like, okay, well, assuming somehow we get to the end of the streak of just all cameo movies, are people going to show up for movies that don't have a bunch of cameos that start, trying to build up just the regular story again? I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to know. But yeah, it is definitely like a concern of mine because I, like Dan, agree that I don't like it's fun in short bursts, but I don't love this direction of every single movie having to be just a giant cameo fest and just pure nostalgia, basically.
I wanted to add on because you had mentioned these cameo movies. Yeah, they were a little fun at first, and I agree, they were fun at first. Like No Way Home was a blast because, like you said, it was so cool to see like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield be on screen with Tom Holland. But for me, the rose-tinted glasses are starting to come off, and like these movies just building up on these cameos, it is starting to get a little old for me. And maybe it's because I don't have that much of a connection to the Fox Marvel movies. Like I never really watched any of the X-Men movies. I never watched any of the Wesley Snipes Blade movies and stuff like that. So maybe if I had a better connection to those movies, I would be feeling less the way that I feel about the cameos in this movie, but who's to say? I don't know.
I would have to say that, like, looking at the MCU and movies with, like, cameos and stuff, I think Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the exceptions to that, since it is such a standalone story that, like, all you really need to do is watch the other two Guardians movies and not the rest of the MCU. But, I mean, it's cool if they bring in people to serve a purpose. Like, Spider-Man having Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in there served a purpose, but like if you look at like Doctor Strange and you're like, here's John Krasinski. I said his name wrong, but or here's Sir Patrick Stewart. Like, and then they just get killed off. Like one, it's like, okay, you're just using them to get people in seats as a cameo. And like I would think they would be like, okay, we're gonna do this, but then be like, hey, remember, this is our own thing. Like, we're our own, like, company and we're writing and we're not going to, like, do a Batman or the Justice League thing where a bunch of people whine on the internet until they get what they want. Like, yeah, we gave you what you want, but we're also our own thing and we're just gonna, like, be like, hey, look, now they're dead type thing. But I guess maybe they're not doing it that way and they're just doing it to be like, hey, look, it's this cool person. Remember that person? So, yeah, that's very interesting. And Dan, you were mentioning like having a connection to like Blade. I feel like the same way is like if I had a connection to Blade, maybe I would care a bit more about like his cameo. But like since I was like, oh, I just know Blade in like vague passing, it's like, oh, that's neat. But like I think cameos also have to work on like that like nostalgia like Udi was talking about. But they have to do it in a clever and thoughtful way, and I don't really think they're doing it that way.
Yeah, I agree. And like well, the part I agree on is like I don't think that they're doing the cameos in as good of a way as they could. I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, like yeah, it's their universe, and I mean, Kevin Feige can do what he wants, but I wish that they would focus on setting up like the prime versions of characters first before they go and bring in variants of everyone. So like for example, like No Way Home. No Way Home I really like and I still like, and it was fun. It was a fun experience when it came out and everything like that. And I think it's been one of the better multiverse stories that they've done. But I'm disappointed. I'm not disappointed that this happened. I just wish that they had introduced the MCU Prime versions of these characters first. I like it was really cool to see Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin and Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, and just the rest of the Raimi villains and the amazing villains, amazing Spider-Man villains to be clear. But I wish that the MCU proper versions of those characters had been introduced before doing that, because now, I mean, not only before then, it was already going to be an impossible task for whoever took over those roles, like trying to one up or match Willem Dafoe or Alfred Molina, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's a crazy tall order, and I would not have envied anyone in that position. But it's like, well, now not only have you like not introduced these versions of those characters, like the newer MCU versions of those characters yet, but now you further solidified how much people will tie these individual actors to these roles. And while it's cool that we got more time with these characters and these actors and these roles, et cetera, but I do think there's a cost to pay there, because in the same way that some people refuse to let go of Tobey Maguire's their Spider-Man, I'm not saying that people can't have favorites. That's not what I'm saying, because obviously everyone has a favorite actor or version of a character, et cetera, et cetera. Like some people might like Spider-Gwen or Miles Morales more than Peter Parker, and that's cool because that's just the version of the character they like more, and that's totally fine. But for me, it's a thing of like, it's just too much nostalgia in terms of like roles like iconic roles like this, where people would never be able to let go of like the first iteration of a character they saw. Like for me, like I grew up on Tobey Maguire. I was literally a child. I wanted to be Spider-Man. Like when my parents would ask me what I wanted to be, I was like, I want to be Spider-Man. And the only person I thought when I thought of that was Tobey Maguire. And obviously like Andrew Garfield got his movies, and then Tom Holland got his movies. But I've found something to love with each one. And like for me, like just to put this out there, I don't know if I've said it before, like I would say Tom Holland is my favorite balance of like the Peter Parker and Spider-Man persona. I think that Andrew is the best Spider-Man, and I think Toby's just, I don't know, he kind of stands on his own. I think I don't know. Like he's just hard to rate amongst the other two, but like I don't like as the character, I don't think he's the best personally. But obviously if that's someone's favorite, then it is what it is. But that's like coming from someone who like grew up on the character and loved the character and everything and that version of the character. But like I'm kind of, again, this goes back to like all the nostalgia baiting and like the cameos and stuff. Like it can be fun and whatever, but again, there is a price to pay because we further cement these people in these roles, and people expecting that only these people can play these characters. And then when they get recast, when there's another Batman or another Joker or another this or another that, people like attack these people for like, oh, well, they'll never be as good as this other person. It's like, you haven't even seen them. You haven't given them a chance. Like, give them a chance and then you'll see. And then half the time or most of the time, these new actors end up blowing people's like expectations out of the water. And it's like, yeah, see, like if you just gave them a chance, if you gave other people a chances, we could have new versions of characters and stuff. But I'm kind of going on a long-winded rant here, so I'll kind of tie it up. But
yeah, and it's really kind of shitty because like Logan was the perfect send-off for Hugh Jackman, and everybody agrees with that. And that was the perfect setup to have somebody new come in and portray Wolverine for once. But what Deadpool and Wolverine does is it brings Hugh Jackman back and keeps him as Wolverine at the end of the movie. So it's like, okay, you had the perfect setup, you had the perfect send-off for the previous actor, perfect time to bring somebody else in, and what you do is you just bring in the old actor again, and this time you keep him alive, so now that's all people are just going to associate Wolverine with. So it's going to make it even harder for the next person, if they even cast somebody else to play Wolverine, to live up to the mantle of Hugh Jackman.
We want the Cavalrine.
Yeah.
Speaking of Henry Cavill, that's a perfect segue. I was going to ask and see if you guys feel like that, what we're experiencing now with like Wolverine and how he's being played by Hugh Jackman and he is this character, or like Captain America is Chris Evans, if that's how people felt about the original Superman with Christopher Reeves.
Yep.
Yeah. And when well, I guess his case is a little different because he got injured and then couldn't be Superman anymore, and then yeah. I don't really know the story about what happened. I just know it's kind of tragic. But like when the next person took over Superman, like how did people feel about that? Did they feel the same way then as we are feeling now? I guess you could look at like the Batman too, and the different variations of Batman, or like Heath Ledger's Joker, whereas everyone is like, this is the Joker. Again, a bit tragic because he died, so like can't really judge that in the same way, but like it'd be really fascinating if we knew, like if we could talk to someone then to compare how we're feeling now.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because, like, let's take Christopher Reeves as Superman, for example. The next person to play Superman after Christopher Reeve was Brandon Routh. And they pretty much just went out of their way to make Brandon Routh look like Christopher Reeves. So, in a way, it's like, okay, they were trying to cast somebody new, but they still wanted somebody that brought the same energy as Reeves. Now, granted, I think that may have had more to do with Superman Returns being a legacy sequel in a sense, where it was supposed to take place in the same universe as the Reeves films. So I guess you have that excuse. But it's interesting you brought up like Heath Ledger as the Joker, because everybody today considers Heath Ledger to be the best Joker of all time. Yes, we're having a podcast about a Marvel movie and we're talking about DC. Deal with it. Anyway.
It was going to come up. It always comes up.
Yeah. So, but like, you ask anybody today, they will tell you that Heath Ledger is one of the best Jokers of all time, if not the best Joker. But when he was cast at the time, everybody hated it. Like they were thinking, oh, they got this pretty guy to play the Joker. Like what? Like get out of here. So people did not like Heath Ledger as the Joker. And I just feel like that's how it is when it comes to these superhero characters, whether it be Marvel or DC. Whenever a new person is cast to take up the mantle of big heroes like Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, you're always going to have people that come out and say, oh, why did they cast this person? This person sucks. Like, that's what happened with Ben Affleck. Like, when Ben Affleck was first cast as Batman, I remember in an interview, he said that he went online to go see what the reaction was. And, like, the very first comment he saw was, Ben Affleck as Batman? No! Or something like that. And he immediately, like, just turned the computer off or something like that. So it's just, people are just always gonna have issues. Like, and, you know, lest we... for, you know, I don't even want to get into like all the issues people have with David Cornsweet as Superman, you know, and then like, I don't know, did anyone have any issues when Tom Holland was cast as Spider-Man?
I mean, I know like some people were like, "What? He's just a kid. He looks too young." But it's like, I mean, he's a high schooler. That it's accurate.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then I know Michael Keaton had a lot of issues because he was like hot off the heels of Beetlejuice. And so when he got cast as Batman, people were like, what? The funny guy? He can't be Batman. And then he blew everyone's socks off.
Yeah, same with Heath Ledger. So that's why I'm saying, like you had already said, Udi, it's just people need to be willing to give these actors a chance, because we could have another Heath Ledger as the Joker or Michael Keaton as Batman, or, you know, you just never know. Like, you could be somebody that just completely blows the performance out of the water. And I wish more people would be willing to give these characters another chance. Lest we talk about, once again, what happened with Chadwick Boseman was very tragic and very sad, but I wanted to see T'Challa's story continue, and it sucks that there were so many people that tied Chadwick Boseman to T'Challa. So Marvel had no choice but to just kill him off in the MCU instead of continuing his story. Whereas people like me, I would have loved to have seen his stories continue, because I like T'Challa, I like the Black Panther. And I mean, I liked Shuri as the Black Panther, but I wanted to see T'Challa's story continue.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of that too, like a more recent one. And like, there's definitely more there. And like, I mean, I agree with your position. Like, I would have wanted T'Challa's story to continue. And then like, I was totally fine with Shuri taking up the mantle eventually. And then, you know, et cetera, like just the Black Panther mantle moving from person to person, because like, I mean, that's how it always is. So like, that would have been fine with me. Again, like, I just wanted at least like a few more movies with T'Challa as the Black Panther, because, you know, again, we wanted to see his story continue. But yeah, like, because people were unwilling to let go. And I mean, the part that complicates this is, I mean, the cast of the Black Panther movies and, you know, Ryan Coogler and the producers, like basically everyone involved with making the movie was very close to Chadwick. And so obviously it wasn't just like fan outcry, but like they had input too, and like whatever they felt comfortable with. So, but I'm positive, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, they're not in control of the movie. Disney and the shareholder price is in charge of what's happening. So I'm sure they were like, well, our stats tell us that people will be upset if we replace Chadwick, so we're just gonna kill him off. And so that's probably why they really did what they did, I'm assuming. But yeah, so it's a mix of a lot of things. But yeah, that's a perfect example, because like even like Chadwick is a fairly new hero. Like he got his big debut in 2016 with Civil War, and he hadn't even been in the role for a decade. Like, he'd been in several movies, thankfully, because it was just that time in the MCU where everything was wrapping up for Infinity War. But yeah, like, he hadn't even been in the role that long, and yet like people were unwilling to let go, even for, something that was out of our control because he had passed away. And so like that's just what's frustrating. Like, I understand, and obviously, like, especially in the case of Chadwick, it's a very complicated situation because he literally passed away. Like, there's no getting around that. It's not that he got fired or anything like that. He just, he died, and it's sad and everything, but yeah, like, people just aren't willing to let go of these iterations. And I'm not saying, like, obviously before, like, if people, if Sony was like, oh well, I don't want Tom Holland in the role anymore after like 2 movies, that would have sucked. Obviously that would have been like pulling the plug way too early. But if people have had their time and it's time to move on, like, again, like how you said at the beginning, Hugh Jackman got his perfect send off with Logan, and obviously, like, that was always going to be the thing. Like, I always for sure expected that in Secret Wars they'd pull everyone back in for one more, go at it. But it's starting to feel like they might not let go of this multiverse stuff because it is just an easy way to be like, well, we'll just toss this character in, this old legacy character in that people love, and we'll put this combo together, and people will go. It'll print money. Like, let's just do it. Why not? Instead of just trying to create new and interesting stories and new versions of these characters. Like, I get that it's not an easy task, but it's not an excuse either. In the MCU itself, like, Sarah Haley Finn is probably one of the best casting directors in all of Hollywood, and she's been nailing it every time. So I would trust her and, whoever else has a hand in deciding who plays these roles to decide, the next Wolverine or the next whoever, So again, it's frustrating people won't let go. And again, and with this one, again, it's just further cementing Hugh Jackman's grip on the role, because even though there's like a montage with like looking for another Wolverine to replace his anchor being with, the most of them are just Hugh Jackman, and then we got again the Cavalrine, which was fun and completely unexpected. But I mean, I have a feeling that's just going to be like a John Krasinski one-off thing where it was cool, it was fun. We'll probably never get more of it. Maybe in Secret Wars again, who's to say? But yeah, that is my big concern with the MCU going forward. Where it's like, sure, it's cool that we got Hugh Jackman as like the Wolverine, yellow and blue suit, getting to be crazy, full rated R, everything. It was cool. It's the perfect what if situation. But again, it's a double-edged sword, and it definitely comes at a cost. And I guess we'll have to see what they do after Secret Wars, because that'll be the most telling thing is after Secret Wars, are they gonna try to like lightly reboot and just set like one established timeline again and then stop all the multiverse stuff? Or I don't know. I guess we'll have to see when we get there. But yeah.
So you said the words "what if," and since they did the Disney animated series "What If," like, what if that is what they're doing with these more recent movies? Is because like their villain turns out the guy that cast him was a sucky person. So now they're like, well, what can we do now other than just like, we need to put out content, because if we don't put out content, we're not going to be relevant, and then we need to do things. So let's just make a bunch of what if scenarios and then just like figure it out and bring it all back with like the new Captain America movie or something.
Yeah, and I mean that's totally believable because, and I will say I had the same thought when I said what if. I was like, oh yeah, there's a multiverse show. But I mean I wouldn't put that beyond them, because I mean it's not a terrible idea, especially if rumors are to be to be believed, where they kind of didn't know where to go after starting the multiverse saga. I mean, I'd believe it, because I mean, it's the perfect opportunity to take advantage of something like this, where you're in the middle of the multiverse saga. So, realities and characters from other realities can bleed into the MCU, and boom, you get all these cool cameos and what if situations. And sure, again, it's cool, but we are almost 5 years into, or no, we are 5 years post Endgame.
Wow,
and
it's been that long?
Yeah, 2019. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
And so it's just like, I mean, like, what are we doing? Like, it's been, I mean, I get that, things are in production for a while, and you went through a CEO change and firing, and et cetera, et cetera. Like, a lot of things happened, the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. Like a lot of unforeseen problems came up, but either way, like it's just and to your point about like Kang, not because he's an infinite version of himself. That doesn't matter. Kang would have been the easiest person to replace ever because he was really only in like one. He was only in one movie and in Loki. And for people that don't subscribe to Loki or subscribe to Disney Plus, they hadn't
I
even
don't
watched Loki
subscribe
yet.
to Loki. That's a topic for another time too.
I guess we're gonna have to cover Loki sometime. I don't know. We'll see. But like that would have been the easiest role to recast, and no one would have batted an eye. I mean, I get that it's a crappy situation of like, oh yeah, you want to take over this guy who was supposed to be the face of our next phase, but ended up doing a terrible thing and being a terrible person. Like, ooh, like I bet that's super enticing. But like, I'm sure someone would have done it for the money. Are you kidding me? So I don't know. It's just really frustrating that they're going in the direction they're going.
Not only that, but when that whole Jonathan Majors situation was happening and the possibility of recasting King came up, there were still people in the comments attaching Jonathan Majors to King. Like there were people going, "Oh, but I don't think anyone would be able to bring out the same like charisma that Jonathan Majors brought to the role and whatnot. Like whoever they get, they probably wouldn't be able to do as good of a job as Jonathan." It's like Jonathan Majors was Kane for like one movie and then for like the entirety of Loki, like you were saying. He wasn't Kang for that long. They could have easily replaced him. Like, come on, people. Learn to let go.
They don't know how.
I mean, they don't. But it's not like they haven't recasted before, because they did it with Rhodes. Okay, granted, that was in like 2008, and like no one cared about the MCU because it wasn't a thing yet, but they have recasted people before. They could just do it. I think they're just cowards. They're just like, no, we're too scared to do that. We don't want the mean internet people to be mean to us. But, I'm not in charge of it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this because I'm sure you were just saying it in casual conversation, but for our audience, to clarify, they did it in 2010. And I mean, yeah, you're right. People probably didn't care.
Whatever.
I know. I'm just saying, just for the record, so people know that we're aware.
Yes, I guess. Yes, thank you for clarifying.
It was for Iron Man 2, and yeah, like you're right. No one cared because he was a one-off character, and like sure, people. I mean, to this day, there are still some people on the internet who are like, "Oh, I bet Terrence Howard would be better." It's like, shut up, dude. Like, Rhodey is just Don Cheadle. Like, he's been the character for like a decade, for more than a decade. Like, shut up. But even beyond that, like they did Mark Ruffalo in 2012 for the Avengers. Like, that's 4 years post Iron Man. I can't really think of. I mean, another one. Like this is a more minor one, but they replaced freaking Hugo Weaving in Infinity War and Endgame. Like that was Hugo Weaving as the Red Skull. That was unfortunately I don't remember his name, but he was an actor from The Walking Dead. But like they've done it before. Like I get that it's not. They didn't replace Iron Man or Thanos, but like come on. Like he was he was basically one-off villain because Loki season 2 hadn't even aired yet actually. So I'm pretty sure, at least. So when Ant-Man Quantumania came out, we hadn't even. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. We did see him in the final episode of Loki. But either way, like he'd been in one episode of the Loki show and Ant-Man Quantumania. Like that's it. So the fact that people weren't ready to let go of Jonathan Majors is insane. But yeah, it is what it is, I guess.
Also, if they're playing around with the multiverse, right? So Kang was only in like a few things. Why is it that he looks the same in every universe? Like not all Peter Parkers look the same. So like they could just totally recast it. And since we are technically supposed to be talking about Deadpool did bring in a bunch of Deadpools, and there was a cowboy Deadpool, but like Spider-Man cowboys are cooler than Deadpool cowboys. I just had to say that, so
fair enough. I mean, I can kind of vaguely answer it, but the real answer is comic book logic. Like, there are so many inconsistencies where it's like sometimes something is one way, but other times when it would make sense, it's not that way. It is what it is. But It could just be that they're like someone's a Nexus character, Nexus being. I think it's that. Like, for example, like America Chavez is just America Chavez. Like, she won't have a multiversal variant because she is just America Chavez. You know, assuming hopefully everything continues to go well for her and her career and everything, and you know they finally put her in another movie. The actress who plays America Chavez, Xochitl Gomez, will just be America Chavez in every single iteration of the character, and that's cool. But I mean, yeah, there's not that many characters that are probably going to be like that for reasons, whether because they want cameos or just for fun or et cetera, et cetera. But that is a reason potentially.
I see. So you said like a Nexus character. Like, is that a lore thing that was like said somewhere? Like in Deadpool and Wolverine, they talk about like an anchor character. Are those concepts that have come up before and I'm just missing it? Or like, is that something from Loki? Like, they keep dumping exposition terms and then not explaining things, and it's frustrating me.
I don't know how much they've gone into it in the MCU. They did reference it in WandaVision. They referenced Wanda being a Nexus being. But other than that, I can't remember if they've mentioned it in anything else. And even then, I don't even know if I think they did, but I don't remember for sure if they fully explained a Nexus being in that show. But to be clear, like that's also a thing from the comics. I don't think that anchor beings are a thing from the comics. I could be wrong.
Okay.
I could be wrong. I don't know, but I have a feeling that it'll be a term that is used in this movie and just quickly forgotten about. So that's how a lot of people also feel, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Like they say something and then we're just going to forget about it. That's like another reason I have frustrations with the MCU is that like they'll say something and I'll be like, okay, cool. Now I need to remember this. And it never comes up again. Just like follow through on your story. Like just figure out what you're doing with multiverse and time travel and set distinct rules to them. And again, maybe this is explained in Loki season 2. I have not watched that. I don't have time to watch a bunch of Marvel television shows anymore. So like maybe there's lore stuff and I just don't know.
But was it explained in Loki season 1, episode 5?
I understood that reference.
I got that reference. Also, they did an On Your Left reference too, which I appreciate because I say that one all of the time.
Yeah, and the one you just mentioned, Udi, that was one of my favorite jokes from the movie. Elias from episode 5, season 1 of Loki.
That was pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie. But anywho, did you guys feel that they succeeded in introducing Deadpool to the MCU?
I do like the way this movie introduced Deadpool into the MCU. I think it works for the rules that the MCU has set up with the time variance authority and with the multiverse and whatnot. I think it makes sense. And it was really fun to see Deadpool fight the TVA at the beginning of the movie, especially because we've only ever seen the TVA in Loki, which is PG-13. So like whenever we've seen them fight, it's, you know, reduced to like PG-13 violence, but then this is a hard R like movie, so just seeing the TVA get messed up in like the most brutal ways possible was a little jarring for me because it's like, oh my god, like this is way different from like what we've seen in Loki. So I will say I did like the beginning of the movie. That fight scene was really fun. I love the gag with like Logan, like the Logan version of Wolverine being like a skeleton and whatnot and rotting away. Like I thought that was funny. I liked Deadpool beating up the TVA agents with Logan's adamantium skeleton and like the part where he gets the claws. That was pretty cool as well. I did think the dancing to Bye Bye Baby by NSYNC was a little cringy, but to each their own. There's a lot of people out there that really seem to love that for whatever reason. So
That's all fair. I agree with pretty much everything you said. Especially, yeah, I don't know. Like in a weird way, I feel like every Deadpool movie has done this, where like they pull like nostalgic needle drops in, and they do it. They almost do it like for the meme, like Celine Dion. Like, sure, there are people who love Celine Dion, but I feel like they do it more in an ironic way than like, oh, because like this is just music everyone loves. Same with like the Backstreet Boys. It's like, oh, ha ha ha. Do you remember that funny pop culture pop song that everyone loved? Ha ha ha. These are also, I feel like, these movies as a whole, I would say, not every single one, but I feel like more so this one and the last one, Deadpool 2, felt very like millennial coded. And I'm sorry, I do mean that kind of derogatorily. That's not bad, but yeah, I thought that was kind of cringe too. What about you, Miranda?
Well, I wanted to say I saw a clip on the internet that was a clip from one of the many X-Men movies with Wolverine in it, and one of the people, they're like in a car, and one of the people go to turn on the radio, and the song that's playing, because it was in the early 2000s, was the Bye 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 song. So I'm assuming it's a reference to that. So that's probably why they included it. But in terms of like them successively introducing Deadpool to the MCU, I think they did it in a way that seems very Deadpool. Again, I have no context of what this character is like before the MCU, but he's the merc with the mouth and he doesn't shut up and he kills a bunch of people and like he's just obnoxiously annoying. And like they introduced that type of character. How he'll play with the other characters, like I don't see Deadpool going up to Sam Wilson and things being okay. Like they are very two different types of people. Like it makes sense for him to like hang out with Wolverine and like the X-Men because he is a mutant maybe, or is part of X-Men stuff. I don't really know. So it like makes more sense, but like I can't see him like hanging out with Captain Marvel. Like I feel like she punch him. But I guess that's what we get with Wolverine. So, well, I am kind of interested in seeing how he plays with the other characters and how they do that and how they make him PG-13 for rest of the movie season, because I assume only his will ever be rated R. So, I don't know. I think for what I know and the type of movie it is, I think they did a good job at being like, hey, here's this character. So I can't really go into depth on any of that, though.
Valid. That's valid. You did preface your thoughts and feelings on this movie at the beginning with saying that you hadn't really watched the other two, so that's totally fair. I guess just to give my quick thoughts, I mean, like I said, I agree mostly with what Dan said, and I mean, yeah, I think they did a good job of introducing Deadpool to the MCU for the most part, I guess. It was never going to be super, super graceful just because, I mean, it's the only reason this is happening is because corporate mergers exist. So, but that being said, like, I mean, it could have been worse too. So I think it was fine. I do think like him immediately just, I don't know, because they didn't really explain anything to do with like Cable's time traveling / reality universe traveling device thing. So like, I don't know, but like him immediately going to like to the Avengers and trying to interview for a position on the team and stuff. It's like, okay, funny, haha, like, whatever. But it kind of, I don't know. It's like, okay, so how long was he aware of the Avengers? And if he's aware of the Avengers, why wouldn't he just teleport to like the middle of a battle in an Avengers movie and like try to help out and try to join that way? Like, why is just interviewing with Happy Hogan the only way he tried to join the team, So, I don't know. Doesn't really make sense, but it is what it is. I'm not going to, again, like Dan said, the story here is not its strongest suit, but it's also not 100% why I'm here, Like, I care about the story of the MCU still to some degree, but yeah, I came here for the shenanigans, I guess, so that's why I'm here.
I also wanted to add on, and you were just saying you weren't sure how like Cable's little time machine doohickey works. So like, yeah, how does that work? Can it only travel through time, or can it hop dimensions? Because how in the hell did he get to the main 616, as Kevin Feige likes to refer to it? But we all know that he's wrong. It's not 616 is the comics. It's not the MCU. It should be like
telling him on and Dan.
Yeah, tell it like Miss Marvel's actor. You tell Kevin Feige how wrong he is. Keep doing that, please, because you are 100% correct. 616, sorry, a little nerd rage here, but 616 is the comics. It is not the MCU. The MCU should be either like Earth 19999, like they referenced in Spider-Verse, or maybe they call it 616-1 or something like that. It's not the main 616. Anyway, enough of my
Common
nerd.
Spider-Verse W.
Yeah. Enough of my nerd rant. So, like, yeah, can he jump dimensions? Because how the hell did he end up in the MCU if it can only travel through time? And this was before he got to the TVA. So, but once again, like Udi said, story's taking a back seat here, so, whatever.
On Kevin, we're waiting for an answer. How did he do it?
Again, it's saying things and then not following through, or just not even trying. Like, you don't have to explain everything about your mechanics. Like DC's Legends of Tomorrow or Doctor Who. It's time travel, it's dimension travel, it's universe travel. Does it always make sense? No, but you at least have to try. And, like, I'm not aware of Cable's time machine, but if it is only a time machine, then yeah, how did he get there? Like, it's not a TARDIS, I'm assuming, like a time and relevant dimensions in space, so I don't get it. Like, figure out your system, then make the movie. Don't make the movie, then do your system.
You would think you would be that easy. Oh, wait. Sorry, just kidding. I still like the MCU, but it is starting to... Its problems are starting to become much more prevalent as the years have gone on. But anyway, so that's how we feel about Deadpool being introduced to the MCU. How do you guys feel? Okay, well, actually, this is kind of a two-pronged question. So, in this movie, as the title suggests, we are introduced to Wolverine. We're introduced to numerous Wolverines through a montage, but basically we end up with one Wolverine that we stick with for the majority of the runtime. He has a particular backstory that I have problems with, but Deadpool also kind of has some problems that he's working through in this movie. We'll start with Wolverine first, but I do want to go back to your thoughts on Deadpool's like little backstory afterwards. But yeah, what did you guys think of Wolverine's introduction and backstory in this movie?
I thought it was an interesting backstory for Wolverine. I'm not very familiar with Wolverine as a character either. I mean, I've seen the X-Men movies, and I think X-Men Apocalypse is great. I know that's a controversial opinion, but I really do enjoy like the Days of Future Past trilogy, and I've seen the other ones and seen the standalone Wolverines, and I really enjoyed Logan. It's a really good movie. So I was a little worried on what they were going to do and how they were going to approach that. But since this is a silly comedy movie, I wasn't expecting anything too serious. But to have a Wolverine be like, I went out on my own, everyone was murdered by humans, which I'm like, okay. Again, I don't know much about the X-Men, so I was like, okay, that's interesting. But just taking like that away to have Wolverine like deal with survivor guilt was interesting, but then they go and they're like, yeah, he started murdering bad people and good people. I was like, that's a little off too. So like some of it like worked, and then some of it I was like, interesting choice. Why are they doing this? Are they going to expand on it? Etc. etc. But like I guess it kind of works for this specific Wolverine who is at the bottom of the deepest like trench. He's like the last one because like Wade goes and he finds all the other ones first before he finds this one. So like I feel like in the multiverse not all of a character's version are going to be the same, but I feel like they should have similar like things going on. So like I don't know, it was interesting, I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not too sure how I felt about this Wolverine's backstory because the entire movie they're building him up to be the quote unquote worst Wolverine. Like what he did was just terrible, and then like even Wolverine himself is like, "Oh, I'm no hero kid. I don't know anything about saving the world. I let my world down." And like I mean, like Miranda said, he has survivor's guilt, which okay, that makes sense for his character. I guess I can understand him going into a depression of having survivor's guilt, but I just felt what he did wasn't that bad. Like they're building him out to make it seem like what he did was super terrible and he's the worst Wolverine because of it. But I mean, he just left while people at home were attacked and he just wasn't there during the battle. Now, once again, it's survival's guilt. I understand that, but just I felt like the way they were building it up just didn't really fit with what actually happened. And like, you're telling me that a group of just regular people, now granted, I don't know, they could have had like super mutant killing weapons or whatnot, but it's explained that just regular humans went in and killed Professor Xavier and the X-Men. Like, I'm sorry, but I just do not believe that Cyclops, Professor Xavier, Jean Grey, especially Jean Grey, there's no way they would lose to a bunch of regular humans, even if they have like all these crazy weapons. I just don't believe. I don't buy it.
I 110% agree. Like, I mean, unless they had Sentinels, I just don't believe that regular humans would defeat the X-Men. And like you're saying, I totally agree. For setting it up like, oh man, this Wolverine screwed over his whole world. His whole world is aware of how bad of a Wolverine and person he is, and it's like, yeah, he went to go get drunk instead of being at home, and then he was ashamed to wear his uniform, and then all of his like his family got murdered and while he was away, like doing nothing useful, and then he went and started killing humans off and just did it because he wanted to and he liked it. Like, okay, sure, that's dark, but like for being the worst Wolverine in the entire multiverse, et cetera, like I really wanted them and thought they were going to do the Old Man Logan storyline where, for those that don't know, in that story, Mysterio tricks Wolverine into thinking that a bunch of supervillains broke in, I believe, to the X-Mansion, and he shows Wolverine that a bunch of like these crazy villains from the Marvel Rogues Gallery are there, and he's like killing them all and blah 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 blah. And then at the end, after he's killed every single one, Mysterio reveals it was all an illusion, and then he pulls back the curtain of the VFX or whatever, and reveals that he killed all the X-Men. Like, I thought they were gonna do that. And like, if not this movie, what other movie would have been the right one to do that? Like, I can't think of any other movie, because it's like, now, okay, if we ever get that storyline or that moment, that's going to be like forever from now. And it's like, okay, sure, we can wait, I guess. But it's like, it just would have made sense to do that storyline for this movie. Like, did people think that would be too irredeemable? Like, I don't like, the whole thing is it wasn't his fault. Like, he was tricked into killing them. It's not like he wanted to, or he was drunk, as far as I know, or anything. Like, he was deceived. So it's like, he would have survivor's guilt, and like he would have the guilt of literally killing his whole family, and that would be really dark. But I feel like that would match the tone of what they said here instead of this, which felt like a nothing burger. It's like, that's why? I was like, what? It's like, okay, I guess, but they should have done that. Why didn't they do that? I don't know. It just felt ridiculous to me, but it is what it is.
Interesting. I didn't know that was a storyline in the comics. So that definitely would have been a different type of movie. But I feel like if they were to do that, it would be too dark. And then you would have like this big dramatic moment, and then like Deadpool make a crude joke. And it's like two very contrasting tones were going here. So it's like they could have done it. I feel like if this movie was a standalone like X-Men movie and you just take Deadpool out of it, it probably would have worked better, and then they could have explored that story more, or chose to do that story, because then they wouldn't have to worry about Deadpool.
I mean, that is a fair point, but like, I feel like they did try to have like the somber moment where like Wolverine's like, I gotta say it, let me get it out, and like I still feel like it would have worked. Maybe they wouldn't have had to show it as as intense. Like, it wouldn't have to be like a super long scene, maybe, and just like implying it and whatnot, and then just showing, the dead X-Men would have been enough. But I don't know. Like for me, like just the tone of the delivery of the story and everything, like the revelation just wasn't satisfying at all. And I mean, maybe it's just because like I know that is an option that they could have done, and so that's why. Like, if I had no idea that that was even a thing, like maybe it wouldn't bother me. But just knowing that they had this in their back pocket that they could have done, and I feel like would have been way more like severe and would have been a proper, reason for him being the worst Wolverine, then maybe it wouldn't bother me. But just knowing that, it's like and plus like they did already do like an Old Man Logan movie. Technically, that's kind of what Logan was supposed to be. And so it's like they didn't do it then, which is understandable. That's not what that movie was. And they didn't do it here. So it's like, God dang it. Like, we're probably just never going to do that at this point, which is like, I mean, fair enough. It is a very dark story, but it's an interesting one. And I don't know. That's, again, if I didn't know about it, it probably wouldn't bother me. But just knowing that it exists is what bothers me, I guess. But yeah, that is a fair point. And like, I could see, I mean, yeah, maybe they thought about it, but they're like, no, that would turn off people or like might, prevent repeat viewings or something, make people too sad. I don't know. So that is a fair point. And I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, this is more supposed to be like a comedy to an extent. So yeah, that's a valid point.
I do have to say, once you know there's a storyline and then the movie doesn't do it, it becomes the most frustrating thing. Because, like, I read Civil War, and then I saw Civil War, and I was like, this isn't like the comics. So, that's always going to be an issue with, like, these types of movies. So, yeah, I totally get that.
So, that's our thoughts on Wolverine's backstory. How did you guys feel about Deadpool's story or backstory in this? Where basically, like, he did all the stuff, which, I mean, Miranda, you don't know any of this, but basically at the end of Deadpool 2, or at least I don't think you know, at the end of Deadpool 2, he takes Cable's, like, time travel doohickey multiverse device. I don't know. We don't know. And he goes and undoes a bunch of stuff. Like, that's how Vanessa's still alive, because he was able to save her or pull her from another universe. I don't know. And then he saves Peter, who died in Deadpool 2. He saves... I don't even remember the guy's name, but the guy with like the magenta ponytail and the white motorcycle jacket, he's a mutant from Deadpool 2 that was on X-Force, but I'm assuming he pulled him from another universe as well and saved him. And then he goes and kills Ryan Reynolds, the actor, before he's able to sign on for Green Lantern. And then he kills the Abomination that was Deadpool in the X-Men Origins Wolverine movie. So he does a bunch of like silly, stupid, ridiculous stuff, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. But in this one, I guess the insinuation is that at some point or afterwards or something, he goes in and tries to apply for the Avengers, and then he's denied. And like that's what sets him on basically like just feeling down in the dumps and feeling depressed for however many years between that event and the start of the movie, basically. So just a quick recap, just so you guys remember. So yeah, what did you guys think about that?
Okay, really random thought, but like you mentioned, like he goes and kills Ryan Reynolds before he signs on to the Green Lantern movie. Now, is he doing that because he's a Ryan Reynolds fan and he doesn't want him to be in this bad movie? Or is he doing that to prevent the Green Lantern movie from being made because he's a Green Lantern fan? That's like a serious question that I have.
He's doing it because he's Ryan Reynolds. Right?
All the above, why not?
Deadpool's a Green Lantern fan. I would not expect that, to be honest.
Plus, Green Lantern exists because DC exists in the MCU, so
yeah.
Who's to say at this point?
Who's to say, yeah. Well, because I don't. Just the whole like fourth wall breaking stuff. Like, I get it. It's funny, but sometimes it raises like questions, because like I got into a little bit of a scrape online because like there were somebody made a pretty good comparison about how people hated the twerking scene in She-Hulk, but they didn't mind the dancing scene in Deadpool and Wolverine. And like I commented saying, I don't see how Deadpool dancing isn't any less cringy than like the twerking from She-Hulk. And like there was one comment that was like, eventually it got to a point where somebody was like, oh, so you thought the dancing in Guardians of the Galaxy, you saw Star-Lord, did you think that was cringy? And I was like, no, I didn't think that was cringy, because I felt like that worked for the scene because it showed Star-Lord like putting music on. So like he was actually listening to music in the scene. So the dancing made sense. But Deadpool's just randomly dancing out in the middle of the battlefield. So then people were like, oh, it's because he can break the fourth wall. He heard the music. It's like, okay. So if Deadpool can just constantly break the fourth wall like this to the point where he can hear the music that's playing in the scene and he can dance to it, why doesn't he just do what She-Hulk did and just go corner the MCU writers and force them to like make the story to the way that he wants it to, so that way he can live comfortably? Why is there even a movie to begin with?
Valid points. I think your answer to the last question is because otherwise there'd be no movie. But my problem with the fourth wall breaking, specifically with the Deadpool movies, and I'm pretty sure all of them have done this to some degree, but it mainly bothered me in this one. But my problem with the Deadpool fourth wall breaks in these movies is that at times he breaks the fourth wall throughout. But at times it feels like the characters that are in the scene with him who can't break the fourth wall, aren't aware, of anything, go along with what he's saying. Like it's totally normal. But, even Paradox, that's the scene that for sure, like at least in my second viewing, I was like, wait a second, like why is he going along with this? Wade Wilson / Deadpool should sound like a crazy person. He should be like, what? What are you talking about? What? Who are you looking? Who are you talking to? Because he's like talking to the audience, whatever, but people just go along with it and don't question. Like, yeah, sure, you can tell he's crazy or whatever. I don't know, but like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I feel like people should acknowledge, like, what are you talking about? Like, they should more like openly acknowledge or question it, because they're not aware that there's an audience. They're not aware of the fourth wall breaks. They just think he's just talking to himself, but like to an audience or something, like an invisible audience. So I wish that they would acknowledge that more, because like I don't like the fourth wall breaking stuff. Like it's fine, whatever. They do some cringy stuff. They do some slightly funny stuff. Like it works. It doesn't work. Whatever. But I just don't like that aspect of it where people go along with it or don't question it. It's like, but why though? They're not aware of it. Even people in the TVA wouldn't be aware of it because they're not aware of the audience. They're people in the thing, in the show or the movie, whatever it is. So I don't know. That was the thing that bothered me. But did you have any qualms with the fourth wall breaking, Miranda?
So speaking of fourth wall breaking, yeah. So like either you have to, like you were saying, it's like either the character has to seem like a strange person and the other characters in the scene have to acknowledge them, like, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? Or you need to do fourth wall breaking in a way that it's like Deadpool is breaking the character, everyone else is like doing their own thing. Like there's a scene in Fleabag, which I have not watched, but the main character, the woman, I don't know her name.
Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Yeah. And she's like talking to the camera doing a fourth wall break, but the person opposite of her, he plays Moriarty in the BBC Sherlocks. He says something and like she's like, "Oh," and turns back to him. And he's like, "Wait, where did you go?" Cuz he's seeing her as like, okay, she has a blank face on and not hearing her inner monologue like the viewer is. So like there's multiple ways to do fourth wall breaking. Like Doctor Who, the newest season, has done a bit of fourth wall breaking. They're like winks to the camera, or like we're gonna do a musical number. Like so, like there's multiple ways to do it. Again, say for like the fourth time, don't know anything about Deadpool's fourth wall breaking, but like some of it landed in this movie and some of it didn't land for me. But I do want to mention that She-Hulk has been doing fourth wall breaking since like the 70s. I think her original comic, her first appearance was 1979, and Deadpool came out in 1990. So, like, if you want to talk about the true like fourth wall breaker, it's She-Hulk, not Deadpool. So when She-Hulk came out and they were like, "Oh, they're doing the Deadpool thing. Why are they doing that?" Because people on the internet are sucky. It's like, well, actually, she's been around longer, so she's probably been doing it longer than he has. So I don't know. There's that. Hopefully that's accurate. I think the dates are. I think she's did do fourth wall breaking in like her earlier stuff, but Yeah, so there's so many different ways to do fourth wall breaking.
Yeah, I mean, I already kind of touched on the fourth wall breaking. I inadvertently put us on this subject, even though Udi had asked what we thought about Deadpool's backstory. But yeah, I mean, once again, I've talked about how I feel about meta humor before. I think meta humor is kind of lazy. I think it's just a way to get cheap laughs from the audience because the audience would be like, "Oh, they know they're in a movie. Ha, that's funny. Ha ha ha." You know, like
Leo DiCaprio meme.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So like, I realize I'm probably a lot more cynical when it comes to meta humor than most people are because, yeah, like I just think it's I just don't think it's that clever when it's used a lot. When it's used sparingly, it can be really fun. Like one of my favorite meta humor jokes is actually from Community. There's like a joke where like because the character Abed, he like loves TV. He loves movies and whatnot. So he's always making references to like movies and TV. And there's one joke where he's like, "Oh, is this going to be a dang, I don't even remember the exact joke, but
Episode?
What?
Was it the bottle episode?
I don't remember. I just know that he made a joke like, "Oh, is this going to be this type of episode?" And then everyone's like, "What? What do you mean?" And then like,
I think it was the bottle episode.
Yeah, it might have been that. Either way, like that. I kind of ruining my reference here by not even remembering the full extent of the joke, but like he references the episode being like a certain type of like TV sitcom episode, and it worked for that because it was just a small little wink to the audience, but it also worked for Abed's character because he's constantly referencing TV and movies all the time. So like that right there, that was clever. I like little fourth wall breaks like that. And then another really good example of a fourth wall joke that I like is from the TV show Chowder. I don't know if you guys ever watched that as a kid, but there's literally one episode where they run out of like money, so they in the show, and then they run out of money for the animation, so it's just the voice actors like talking with each other in real life. Like, that's fun too. But the thing is those shows aren't constantly doing it. Like, I know Community does break the fourth wall quite a few times, but that's not the entire point of the show. Like, it's not the point of Abed's character to just constantly break the fourth wall. That is the point of Deadpool's character. That is the point of She-Hulk's character, is just to constantly break the fourth wall. And like, I can understand like that appealing to a lot of people, but to somebody like me, it just doesn't appeal to me that much because eventually it just gets kind of old for me. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, you're referencing the audience. Okay, it's funny. Can we just move on? And like, not to go too off topic, but just the way like She-Hulk, it does fit her character to break the fourth wall. She's been doing that for a while, but just the way that they handled it in the last episode, like, I wasn't a fan of, but like some people were, because there's like, no, this fits the character. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. I get it. But for somebody like me, I'm just not that big of a fan of it when it's used too much.
Yeah, and that's totally valid. And I agree with the overall sentiment that you're going with, because like it does take actual skill with writing to make fourth wall breaks work, at least for everyone. Like, I would say, and this might be controversial, I don't know, but I feel like meta humor in comedy is the jump scare of the horror genre, where it's the most, well, I won't say most, but I feel like it's a thing that especially more recently has become more popular to do, but not everyone does it well. And so you'll get a crappy mainstream horror. Well, I don't want to call it crappy. I'll call it a movie that's more just meant to appeal to most people. And so it's not as interesting or artistically inclined horror movie that just has a lot of jump scares and is easy to like get butts and seats for or whatever, et cetera, as opposed to something like Hereditary, which is actually, not to, build it up, but can actually scare people and blah, blah, blah. Anyway. And so like meta humor or like fourth wall breaks, it's like, it can be just super cheap and easy. And it's like, oh, let me just poke fun at this sentiment that the Marvel subreddit has. Ha 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 ha. They'll love that. They'll eat it up. And it's like, yeah, sure, a lot of people will, but it doesn't make it funny or good writing. You're just it's a feedback loop. You're just taking what people are saying to you, poking fun at it and giving it back to them. And then they're like, ah ha ha, they're aware. It's so funny. And it's like, really not though. But I mean, here and there, they do have some good meta humor bits or whatever. Or like, not to reference this again, but it's like in the Fast X episode that we did, where they reference how they're freaking invincible and they don't die. And it's like, yeah, you pointing that out is just more infuriating. It's not funny. It's infuriating because they don't die. There's not in any danger whatsoever. But you keep putting them in situations where, oh no, they're going to die. It's like, no, they're not because they're invincible.
I just want to add on to that. I hate it when movies and TV shows do that, where it's like, oh yeah, man, the writing here is so bad, isn't it? Wink, wink to the audience. It's like you acknowledging it doesn't absolve you from it. Yeah, it doesn't excuse it. Like, I hate that.
Yeah. Yeah. It just makes it more infuriating because, like, so you're aware, but you're not going to do anything. Oh, okay, cool. Nice. I also wanted to add one quick last thing. And obviously, like, it wasn't your style of, how they went about it, whatever. But I don't know. I liked She-Hulk in like the final episode. I think just because I wasn't expecting it to go to that extent. Like, even the Deadpool movies haven't gone fully to that extent. Like, the most they've done is acknowledge, like, the camera. I mean, aside from jimming the camera, like, in this one where Deadpool literally he's like, here, give me 1 second. He runs to the camera, and then he does that stupid bit about, like, oh, screw you, Fox. I'm going to Disneyland or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Like, okay, ha, ha, ha. But, like, other than that, or, like, again, he jims the camera for the Blade bit or whatever. But yeah, this actually, like, had Jen Walters going to Marvel Studios and talking to Kevin, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, I thought it was kind of fun and whatever. I actually thought in that episode that she was going to go and literally talk to Kevin Feige. So when it ended up being a freaking robot, I was like, oh, okay, well, it's just dumb enough for me that it works, and I think it's funny, but it is what it is.
I just wanted to mention, if you are looking for a piece of media that does meta humor, referential humor, and you're into superheroes, I suggest the Teen Titans Go to the Movies. It's a great movie. It's hilarious, but, like, it's also a kids movie, so I guess there's that. But they do a lot of that, like, meta humor, fourth wall breaking stuff, but, like, in an interesting way. So I just wanted to mention that, since we're talking a lot about the fourth wall and, like, frustrations around it. Give that one a try, I guess. If you got, like, an hour and a half, maybe. I think that's how long it is. I don't know.
I'm going to have to agree with Miranda here. I haven't seen the Teen Titans Go to the Movies movie, but they have some really good jokes in there. There's a really funny one with Stan Lee, and there's also a really, really dark but also really funny one with Bruce Wayne's parents. But yeah.
I have also not watched the movie, but Dan told me, I think he even showed me the clip of the part they just referenced, and that was hilarious. So, can't agree. You should definitely check it out. I should check it out. And yeah. But anywho, going in the Wayback Machine to the Deadpool backstory part, what do you guys think of Deadpool's backstory?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I don't really have a lot to say about Deadpool's backstory. I mean, it's just he's just struggling to reconnect with Vanessa, really. I mean, that's the gist of it, right?
Kind of, I guess, yeah. If you, like, in a very, very brief nutshell, yeah. It's just, like, he got in his head about not being able to join the Avengers and got depressed about it, and then that, like, ruined his relationship with Vanessa, and then they broke up, and then he's been, like, I guess, kind of trying to get back with her ever since, but also not 100%, just because he's been feeling down in the dumps, I guess. Yeah.
So the entire point of why he got depressed was because he didn't get accepted into the Avengers?
Yep.
Oh, I never picked up on that. Huh. That's... I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I think that's kind of lame, if I'm being honest.
Yep. It's kind of stupid.
That's pretty lame, yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah. I think Deadpool's backstory's lame. Like, I would have wanted there to be a little bit more emotional weight for the reason why he doesn't. Well, he's having issues with Vanessa. I would have liked for something like that. But once again, this is a silly comedy movie where Deadpool, like you said earlier, he goes up to the camera and is like, "Screw you, Fox! I'm going to Disneyland." So, I don't know. Maybe it was too much for this movie.
I just think it's funny that both him and Wolverine's stories just like the emotions, I guess, from the characters are there. It's like, oh man, I I feel like a failure. I feel like I'm never going to be good enough, or I'm the worst Wolverine in my universe. Everyone hates me. But then when you actually get the reveal of why these characters feel the way they feel, it's like that makes no sense. Why do you feel so strongly about these things with this setup? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Like, it would have made more sense if they Gamora'd Vanessa, in the sense of like he was able to save her from a different universe, but it was like a universe where she didn't love him or something. I don't know, like something like that. That would make more sense, and so that's why they were separated. Then like he didn't get accepted into the Avengers, which that whole scene he played for comedy. He didn't like really take it seriously. And then like that he's down in the dumps and depressed for years, and it like ruins his relationship because of that. Like that just doesn't make sense. It's just stupid.
It's very interesting to hear you guys talk about this because I know nothing about Deadpool's backstory, like zero things. But like if he hadn't gone and saved his friends, I feel like that could have added more weight to his backstory in this movie, and like have that be one of his like goals to the movie to go get his family. But the fact that he's just like depressed because he's not on Avengers, understandable. I mean, I wouldn't personally want to be on the Avengers. I'd rather be a Guardian than an Avenger. But like I get it. And like to then like go into a weird funk or like a depressive state or whatnot, I guess that makes sense. And then like mental health and physical health like can affect who you are and how you see yourself as a person and your relationships. So like it like makes sense. Is it the best thing for the movie? I don't know, but like it makes sense to like a point.
But anywho, did you guys have a favorite cameo or Easter egg in the movie?
Not really sure if this is an Easter egg, but I mentioned this in my initial thoughts. But when Wade goes to like that first universe to find Logan, and you see Hugh Jackman sitting at the bar, and then he gets up and he is his comic accurate height. Well, okay, I don't know if it's comic accurate, but he's definitely shorter than Hugh Jackman is. I was just like, yes, see, we're gonna get a comic accurate suit, and we're gonna get short Wolverine. So I thought that was funny. I like the fact that they brought the young woman back from Logan into this movie. I wasn't expecting to see her. Unfortunately, I don't know her name or her character name, but it was really nice and neat to see her.
Her name is Daphne Keane, and she plays X-23.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, so it was cool to see her. And I thought it was neat that like Blade was there and Elektra was there, and it's like, yeah, that's neat. Again, don't really have a connection to either of those movies, so I know it probably hits harder for people who grew up in that time period watching that movies, or people who like grew up with those movies. So I guess that's like the cameo / Easter egg. I didn't really catch any other ones, or at least I'm not remembering any other ones.
Yeah, I agree with Miranda. The short Wolverine gag was really funny. I really enjoyed that because that is a topic of discussion that always comes up online. It's like, do you know that Wolverine's actually only like 5'3" or 4 or whatever? I don't know the exact height. So he's actually like super short. Like Hugh Jackman is like way taller than how Wolverine actually would be. So I find it super funny that they finally acknowledged that. So yeah, that was really fun. I really liked the reference they had because they referenced quite a few comic book covers in that montage. Like the one where Wolverine looks like he's crucified on like an X-Men or like an X or whatever. That's a very famous. That's like a comic book cover. I don't know how famous it is, but it's a X-Men comic book cover. And then there's another one where he's in that brown and yellow suit and he fights the Hulk. Like the Hulk shows up for a little bit. That's also a comic book cover where like on the comic book, like Wolverine, he has his claws coming out and you see Hulk's head in the reflection of his claws. So they recreated that for that scene. That was really cool. I'd have to say that one was probably my second favorite because, my number one favorite Wolvie cameo has to be the Cavalrine. Like that, I was not expecting that. And I remember when we got to that, I was looking because they don't reveal who that is at first. So I was looking at him, I was like, oh my God, like Hugh Jackman got jacked for this role. Like, holy crap. But then I find out it's Henry Cavill and I was like, oh, that's why he looks so huge right there. But yeah, that was cool. And hey, I mean, once again, like, we already talked about this earlier, but I mean, if they want to cast somebody else as Wolverine, Henry Cavill is right there. So, but yeah, as for like a famous or favorite cameo or Easter egg, I'm not entirely sure because a lot of the cameos in here were just the Fox Marvel characters, and I've already explained I haven't seen a majority of the Fox Marvel movies. I watched the first two X-Men movies a really long time ago, so I don't really remember them that well. I haven't seen any of like Days of Future Past or First Class or any of those ones. I did watch Logan. Logan is a very, very good movie. I would highly recommend. But yeah, I don't really, a lot of the cameos, once again, just didn't really feel that impactful to me because I just didn't have a connection to those characters. I mean, although I did quite enjoy, I mean, it was interesting to see Channing Tatum as Gambit. I do like Gambit because I'm watching the 90s X-Men show right now, and I think Gambit is probably my favorite character from that show. So I liked that Channing Tatum kind of bought the energy of that Gambit, although like his Cajun accent did leave a little bit to be desired. but yeah.
So I was not aware of the comic book cover references. That's really neat to know. I wish I would have known that because I would have been like, hey, that's cool. Because I like comic book cover art. Like I mainly buy comics because they look pretty to me. So that would have been cool to know. But that's cool that they did that. And then I forgot to mention that I did like seeing Chris Evans in it as Johnny Storm. I thought that was funny. But you mentioned Days of Future Past, like X-Men. If they would have put Quicksilver in this movie, I would have been like, oh my gosh. Like, that would have been a cameo that I would have, like, been super, like, into, but they did not. And they probably wouldn't have anyways, because the whole WandaVision thing, he's in that. But, yeah. Anyways, point is, I did not know about the comic covers, and that is cool.
I really liked, I mean, the montage was just cool. It was just it was a fun thing. It started off with the short Wolverine thing, which is like a fun little dig at like people who are overly like picky about like, oh, that actor isn't that height, so they can't play that character. It's like, I mean, if we're being honest here, like Wolverine, would be like 5'3" if he were comic accurate, and no one would like that seemingly. So it's like, just the whole height thing is stupid, but whatever. But it was funny. And then the Cavalrine, that was so unexpected. Like when I saw that, I was like, what? Because it was rumored a while back, like, oh, he interviewed with Marvel, but the opportunity passed, or like, oh, he might be Wolverine. And so, I mean, assuming this was the opportunity, then it didn't pass. It just, it was a cameo. It's just fun. I really don't know if I think he would be fun. I hope if they ever bring him back at all, I think it'd be fun to have him be in like Secret Wars, but I don't think he should take over Wolverine. I think he's not old, but I just think for taking on like a brand new role that will presumably be like here in the MCU for a while, I think he is just like too old, quote unquote, for being like a new Wolverine. I think they need to get just a younger X-Men cast. But anyway, he was fun. I mean, yeah, Chris Evans as Human Torch, I totally just didn't even think about it because, like, again, I mean, they fooled me. They did like the red and blue. I'm like, oh man, Cap, that'll be cool seeing Captain America and Wolverine with Cap. And at least in the comics, sometimes like Captain America and Wolverine have like history together because of like both being around in World War II and whatnot. So I was like, that'll be kind of cool. And then he takes the cloak off. I was like, oh, duh, freaking Johnny Storm. Of course they're going to do that. And so that was kind of fun. And then, of course, his freaking demise just being skinned at the snap of Cassandra Nova's fingers. Oh my god, that was insane. And then of course the post-credit scene, the lovely post-credit scene was kind of funny. However, I did really like the Blade cameo, mainly just because I was not that was probably my, aside from Gambit, I guess, was my least expected cameo, just because of there was like a recent article, I mean, one of many, really. But a recent article talking about the production troubles that the new Blade movie has faced, and then Wesley Snipes like publicly, like on social media or somewhere, like said something like, "Man, like people are." I am gonna butcher his quote, like basically like they're making it too complicated. Like, how can you screw up a movie about like a vampire killer? Like, it should be super easy, and I'm the only Blade, whatever. Like something along those lines. And so, like when I saw him, I was like, "What the?" I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe he's in this." Because like I mean, obviously they probably shot it, well in advance, but I was still surprised that he was in it. And then I mean, Jennifer Gardner as Elektra was again like this movie is like just a love letter to like the Fox Marvel movies. So like, was it cool to see her in the role? I mean, I don't know, but like it's not really about like, man, everyone was looking forward to the Elektra cameo. Like, no, it's just I think this movie was a good opportunity for people to get kind of like a second chance or a slight redemption arc and getting to be like the version of the character they wanted to be and not the one that the studio butchered into existence. But yeah, I don't know. She was kind of fun. And then Gambit, God, Channing Tatum's Gambit was probably the biggest shock aside from the Cavalrine, but also was just so fun because like famously Channing Tatum wanted to play Gambit for like 15 years or something like that, and then he tried so hard and like it was supposed to happen and just never did. And it was cool that he finally got his chance. So even if he was mainly like a joke in the movie, like I'm glad he got to be kind of cool and kick some butt and really get his chance to shine. So that was kind of cool. I do think that Daphne Keene's cameo would have hit a lot harder, but they freaking put her in one of the last few trailers. I didn't even watch the trailer, but of course online, like people immediately started sharing and talking about the news that she was in the trailer and like, oh, she's confirmed. And it's like, God dang it. Like, I didn't want to know that. If I hadn't known that, that would have been really cool, but it is what it is. But there are actually a few kind of hidden cameos because they're all mainly Deadpool people that I don't think you guys know about. And so I'll share them. I did know this one because I saw it in the credits the first time because I wanted to see who it was, because there was rumors that Taylor Swift was going to be Dazzler or Ladypool for a few months. So I was like, I wonder if that's true. It was not. I was pretty sure it wasn't, but it was not. Ladypool was played by Blake Lively, aka Ryan Reynolds' wife. Nathan Fillion played Headpool. Matthew McConaughey played Cowboy Pool. Oh yeah, Chris Hemsworth. He was in this. Why was Thor crying? That was probably my favorite bit from the movie, actually. And now that I think about it, just because it was so. Like, it wasn't the funniest thing ever, but like I just thought it was stupid that he kept every time he'd wake up from being knocked out or something, he'd be like, "What? Why was Thor crying?" Or Thor. I don't know, just the right amount of stupid that I was like, all right, that's kind of funny. But yeah, I forgot about that. Harry Holland, aka one of Tom Holland's brothers, played Harold Poole. I don't even know which Deadpool that was, but that was kind of a crazy random cameo. So yeah, I thought I'd add those in here. Yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of fun cameos in The Void. I don't even remember what it's called. And it's ripe with references. Oh, there was one Easter egg that I haven't really seen be talked about, and I'm pretty sure it was this. I'm pretty sure that the thing that they used to escape Cassandra Nova's base the first time after like Johnny gets killed or whatever is a sentinel leg. So that was kind of cool. I was like, oh, that's fun. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of fun little Easter eggs. And then, I also like the Mad Max stuff. Like, that was completely unexpected, and that was fun. Like, I liked how they Mad Maxified a few MCU vehicles. Like, they had Red Skull's World War II like vehicle, so that was kind of fun. And then, yeah, just it being like a weird Mad Max strip off was kind of funny to me. But yeah.
I did want to mention, because I forgot to mention it, I did want to talk about the Johnny Storm cameo with Chris Evans, because I thought that cameo was cool because it was kind of a nice aversion. Because like Udi was saying, we're all thinking this is going to be a Captain America cameo. And I, at the point, completely forgot that Chris Evans played Johnny Storm in the Fox Fantastic Four movie. So when he said Flame On, I was like, oh, that's right. He was Johnny Storm. So like, that was cool. I did enjoy that cameo. And to comment on the Mad Max part, I also thought that was really funny because when I was watching it, I was like, this is reminding me like a lot of Mad Max. Is this what they were going for? And then Deadpool just out of nowhere goes like, Furiosa or something like that. And I was like, yep, that's exactly what they were going for.
Well, it's funny because like before they, I think it's before they even show up, like Deadpool is like talking about like, oh, it's kind of giving Mad Max vibes, but that'd be IP infringement, so we can't do that. And then they literally have like Mad Max vehicles like show
Oh
up right
yeah,
after.
yeah, he
So
did say that. I forgot about that.
yeah, so I thought that was kind of funny. I guess just to add to like my favorite Wolverine, aside from the Cavalrine in like the Wolverine montage, I think the like the yellow and brown suit where he's like gonna fight the Hulk was my favorite. Like that, ooh, that suit looks so good. I still think I like the main suit more. Like I like the yellow and blue, but ooh, that yellow and brown suit looked really, really good. Speaking of Wolverine, I also wanted to ask you guys, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, but do you guys think that Jackman coming back as Wolverine to the MCU was a good idea, or do you feel like it was? I mean, was it a bad idea to come back after having Logan and having his proper send off? Is this just like opening a can of worms that will just never be sealed again?
Yeah, we kind of already lightly touched on this, but I don't think it was necessarily a bad idea to have Hugh Jackman come back as Wolverine. But I do think it was a bad idea to have him survive at the end, because I thought for sure he was going to die at the end of the movie, and it would have made sense for him to die. But no, they just kept him alive. So once again, that just leaves open the idea of just Hugh Jackman just always playing Wolverine and them never giving anyone else a chance. And like you were saying before, Udi, it's only cementing the idea in some people's heads that only Hugh Jackman can play Wolverine and nobody else can. I don't think the idea of Hugh Jackman coming back for this movie is bad, but I think the idea of him sticking around is.
Agreed. And I feel like, I don't know, because it's like if he hadn't done this, then we probably would never get a Deadpool Wolverine movie. And if we did, it would probably be with like a new Wolverine, which again, like I would have been open to that. I would have been fine with that. Like I would have rather, they could have literally done this movie, except done it differently, where they, like he does the whole intro and it's like, oh man, Logan really did die. Crap. Like, what am I going to do now? And then he travels the multiverse and then he finds a new Wolverine. Like, boom, perfect. But no, they had to cash in on the nostalgia and whatever. And it's like, look, was it cool? Was it fun? Sure. Was it cool to see Hugh Jackman like really get to be comic Wolverine, the yellow and blue, and blah blah blah, and be like R-rated, like he was in Logan, etc. Yes, it was cool. And you know, obviously Hugh Jackman's a great performer, and he probably had some of the best performances in the movie, etc., etc. But like, I just, yeah, it's a double-edged sword because it's like, again, like as we brought up, it's just further cementing his place in people's minds as like the Wolverine, and anyone who tries to replace him is just gonna not be as good, blah 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 blah. But I will say, if not this movie, again, I mean, I was almost certain that in Secret Wars we were going to get like a prime Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man, a prime Chris Evans Captain America, a prime Hugh Jackman Wolverine, etc. Like all these like the idealized versions of these characters, I was almost certain we were going to get. So now, I mean, I think there was even an article today where Kevin Feige apparently was interviewed and he was like, yeah, after the movie gets out of theaters or soon here, I'm going to have a conversation with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh and, you know, talk about what we should do next. And it's like, who would have thought that earning so much money would steer creative decisions? So I wouldn't be surprised if Hugh ends up sticking around for a little bit more. I really hope it's not further than Secret Wars, but I at this point, I don't know. I mean, they like to, like people online like to pretend that people are forcing Hugh Jackman to do this, but no, he's not being forced to. He's signing the contracts gleefully. I mean, he likes the role, I'm sure, and I'm sure he likes being paid tons of money. So, like, while the diet and exercise routines suck, I'm sure, like, I'm positive that the pros outweigh the cons for him. So I don't know how long he'll be playing the role, but I'm sure it probably will be for longer than it should be at this point.
I mean, he's probably just gonna keep doing the role so he can get money, so he can just hang out on Broadway and do his little musical theater career. Because he's probably getting paid more to show up as Wolverine every 2 seconds. Let's say he has a bunch of cameos in the future. He's probably getting paid more to do that than it to be in his musical career. So if he stays around, cool. If he doesn't, cool. Like, I mean, he's not he's not even really returning to the MCU. They're introducing him to the MCU, so it really can go anywhere. He's returning to the character, but this isn't the Fox character. This is a totally different character. Just like how Wolverine in Days of Future Past trilogy is different than Wolverine and is different from Wolverine and Logan and the original like X-Men movies. Like there's all interesting takes on it, so by bringing him in, I'm sure they'll do something interesting. Whether interesting means good or bad, that is for the future to decide, but I think they probably wanted to bring him back, and I don't really know what they would have done for the next Deadpool movie, so it like kind of makes sense for this and the fact that they're like referencing and acknowledging the Fox properties, so it like makes sense. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? We'll see after the initial like hype is down. So
Yeah, that's totally fair, and yeah, I don't disagree. So, did you guys have any other thoughts on Cassandra Nova? I know even though she's the antagonist of the film, we haven't really talked about her. At least not much. I know you name dropped her earlier, Dan, but at least like I'll start. For me, I think she was threatening and imposing enough. Like I knew of the character. I didn't really know anything about Cassandra Nova, but she was definitely threatening and definitely seemed like a pretty strong threat for them to go against. Like I wasn't quite sure how they were going to deal with Cassandra, but that all being said, I mean, classic MCU, have an interesting villain, kill him off first movie, probably not coming back. So it's like, I mean, she was good enough for like as a one-off villain, but it's just like, I mean, I don't know. Again, as I've said before, I really wish they would just not kill off villains. I would rather they had recurring villains or something. I mean, I guess with Cassandra, it kind of doesn't work. You can't really have her to continue existing because she would just escape. But I don't know. But then it's also like, okay, well then where was she in Loki? Oh wait, you didn't think about having her in Loki, so she's not there. It doesn't make sense. Whatever. It's fine. But yeah, what about you guys? What do you think?
Yeah, I thought Cassandra Nova was pretty cool. She was like wickedly overpowered. So I was like, damn, how are they ever going to beat her? Because she can literally just destroy you with one simple like flick of her fingers. So it was interesting to see to see them like go up against her, and like I guess the way they beat her wasn't really straightforward because they kind of had to like allow her to do what she wanted to do. Like they pretty much had to let her almost complete her like evil plan or whatever in order to defeat her, which was interesting. I mean, when someone is that overpowered, that's like I think the only way that, or I shouldn't say overpowered. When someone is that powerful, I feel like that's really the only way you can really defeat them is by just kind of outsmarting them in a sense. But yeah, I like Cassandra Nova. I agree with you, Udi. I wish they wouldn't have killed her off because it would have been cool to see her return. But hey, it's the multiverse. Maybe they can find another version of her. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you guys about them killing her off. It seems to me that if the character is a woman, villain or not, they stay dead, and if they're not, they come back. If they're like a guy, they come back. Look at Loki; he's a prime example of that. So it's kind of frustrating on that end of things. Anyways, it was interesting to see her as a character. I didn't know Charles had a like twin sister. I think that would have been really interesting to explore if this was a standalone X-Men movie. There's a lot of things in this movie that could have just worked as an X-Men movie without Deadpool, but since Fox is dead, unfortunately, we're probably never going to get any of those characters back. We might get the same actors, but I don't know. It would have been interesting to see more about her backstory and like develop that without being in this weird void and the TVA stuff. Because truthfully, as much as I love time travel, I am not a fan of the TVA. It's one of the reasons I don't particularly care for the show Loki, but Umbrella Academy does it so much better. I think it's interesting that they brought her in and like Her powers are interesting. I like how distinctly different they are from Charles and like Jean Grey's like telekinesis mind powers. Yeah, it would have been just nice to know more about her and like expand her story, but we are here and this is what happened, so that's that, I guess.
You mentioned this earlier, and I forgot to say this, but you mentioned like there could have been maybe a more interesting movie done if this was more like a standalone X-Men movie or whatever. And like, because you mentioned it during when I was talking about like the Old Man Logan thing, where I wish they'd done that. I don't disagree. I mean, I feel like again, like one-off movies have the benefit of they can just tell the story they're just trying to tell the best story they can, and it's self-contained, so there's no trying to sequel bait or whatever. And I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, you're not wrong. This movie could have maybe been better, or probably been better if it had been like a one-off or several things that happen in the movie. If they'd just been their own movies, could have told a better, more interesting story with that stuff if it had been a self-contained movie. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, I just don't think that's going to happen unless like Marvel did sort of like a DC thing where they do like an Elseworlds thing and stuff like that. But I think if they do that won't be until, again, either they reboot or like, again, assuming if they do something with Secret Wars where they reset everything and it's just one prime timeline, no more multiverse stuff, et cetera, then that would be maybe the only way they could do that. But until we get to some point like that where everything's more streamlined, I agree. I don't think they're going to do that. But it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, do you guys have any other thoughts, or should we go to ratings? And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3 out of 5. Just kidding. Oh.
I'm ready for ratings.
Okay.
What do you guys rate Deadpool and Wolverine? Dan, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So, quick summary. I did have a lot of fun with Deadpool and Wolverine. I really enjoyed my time watching it. I thought the fight scenes were great. I loved seeing Hugh Jackman as Wolverine again. That was a lot of fun. I love the on-screen chemistry he had with Ryan Reynolds. But the cameos didn't really mean much to me, and that's really all this movie had going for it because the story just kind of wasn't there. But all that being said, I still had a great time, so I'm going to give this movie 3.5 out of 5 stars.
Nice. That makes sense, and that's totally fair. 3.5 out of 5. What about you, Miranda?
I'm going to give it a 3 because it is a medium film. It's okay. There's some funny bits. There's some not so funny bits. There's interesting referential things. There's uninteresting referential things. There's a plot that's kind of interesting, but also like not interesting. So overall, medium film. So a 3 out of 5.
Valid. I am torn between both of you. I've been thinking about it since I saw it. Part of me feels that it's very much a 3-star movie, but I don't know. The more I've sat with it, it's like, again, like I did not find a lot of it funny, and a lot of it was kind of cringy, and a lot of it was, I mean, again, Deadpool is just annoying and immature and childish, et cetera, like, but that's how the character is. And like Miranda said, doesn't mean you have to find him annoying, and he did kind of get a little annoying at times for me in this movie. But overall, I still had fun, and I enjoyed a number of the Easter eggs and cameos, and there were some fun situations. So I think that, and the fact that I will almost certainly end up rewatching this, probably not super, super often, but I'll probably rewatch this every so often once it comes out for home release or home video for the real ones. So I think I'm going to go with a 3.5 out of 5. Which means that the overall Atomic Lizards score for Deadpool and Wolverine is a 3.33, which means that is a 3.5 out of 5.
Thank you so much for joining us and listening to our conversation about Deadpool and Wolverine. If you're interested in hearing more, check out our previous episodes. And as always, you can find us on Instagram at Atomic Lizards Pod and on Letterboxd at Atomic_Lizards.